our very special guest tonight, known to many affectionately as Shambles. Seamus Shambles McGoldrick, you're very welcome to the Sligo Show. How are you keeping?
Thanks, Bernard. I'm keeping very well.
Very good, very good. Nice relaxed evening.
Yeah, well, don't ask me that question about why they call me Shambles. And I was a few minutes late now, so I have to apologise to the viewers.
There's never a stress here in the Sligo Show.
Yeah, so well, I feel like I'm really on the main winning streak here or something like that. It's like Kenny Live. Remember Kenny Live?
Well, I thought you might have said something better than that now. Kenny Live. Well, look, I suppose everyone knows your face, mostly from the surf at Strand Hill, but I suppose not all of us know a bit more about your upbringing and, tell us a bit more about family life growing up and school, college, etc. like that.
Oh yeah, well, I'm Strand Hill born and bred. I didn't go too far from the tree. I did a few years in Dublin. I got a degree up in college there, and then after that I went out to Leitrim in Drumshanbo, my spiritual homeland out near Keiju.
Yes.
And Leitrim. So, but before all that, I grew up in Strand Hill. Mary and Seamus out there, a lot of people would know them in Strand Hill.
And were they surfers at all, or were they into the thing? Or was that
I
in
was
the family?
the black sheep in that sense. I was the only surfer.
Yeah. And then like when did you first kind of hit the waves? Like, because it wasn't a family thing, I suppose. Was it big in Strand Hill even back then? I'm a blow-in as well. So was it always a huge thing in Strand Hill, or did it just...
Well, surfing in the northwest of Ireland was a kind of an underground thing since the 60s. Surfing arrived in like 66, 67, 68 into Sligo. There's some really interesting stories there. I'll go back and tell you about the surf safaris and the Silver Surfers. It was a great documentary was done. But the first time I hit the waves, I remember going down for family beach dates and stuff like that. I remember grabbing onto my dad's neck and jumping through the waves when I was younger.
Okay.
We went to Cullinamore Strand, which is another nice strand. Like, when your parents would come back from work and you're living beside the beach. My mum didn't drive, so my dad would come back from work and all the kids would be out with the bucket and spade waiting to go out on the hot sunny evenings.
Was it summer, or was this any
just
time
on
you
the
got
summers?
a chance?
On the summers, when during the heat waves. So always had great memories of being out on the beach, and didn't pass too much heat of the surfing until I started to be. I had a childminder who was, a lot of people have come to Strand Hill and they've seen the surf fans out there, and they don't realise that used to be a residential street. So a lot of people used to live there. And
right on the seafront there, that area, like. Okay,
right on the seafront now, where the Cushfarga apartments are.
Yeah.
That was a woman named Mary McDermott and John. They were my childminders, and their two sons. One's named Ross and Con McDermott. Con was a champion surfer.
Yeah.
Ross was a bodyboarder, which is there wasn't that many.
Yeah,
in Strand Hill.
It's not seen as often, I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially back then, yeah.
Well, it was kind of, bodyboarding got really big in the 90s and, kind of spread its tentacles all around, and bodyboards wind up everywhere. In fact, Dinny Byrne, one of the guys who run Mammy Johnson in the Strand, their uncle, great uncle, came back from the States with a belly board in the late 50s.
Okay.
And
no one had seen this really over here.
Yeah, this was all fancy stuff in San Diego, but... So when I was childminded, these guys had surfing and bodyboarding tapes. And then after school, I used to come from Strand Hill School and get, cheese sandwich and a cup of coffee, watch these bodyboarding tapes. And so I didn't actually start surfing, I actually started watching the videos.
Oh, right, okay. So that's where you really got, even though it was on your doorstep, it was kind of on a screen, you kind of started to go, oh, that looks really, that's mad.
Yeah, and that was the bodyboarding that really drew me in. And then, of course, I'd be going out the front of the house and seeing the lads paddle out and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose I had a good friend whose dad was John O'Donnell, who was an early chairperson of the kind of Sligo Surf Club. And the O'Donnell family were great surfers, champion surfers. They would have brought me out the first few times. And just as a young 10, 12-year-old, I was really I saw in the videos and I saw the waves and I was like, right, well, one day I'm going to be doing that.
Perfect match.
Yeah.
And now, where did the nickname Shambles itself come from?
Well, that came much later when I actually started doing competitions and I would have gotten an Irish surfing team.
Okay.
But I do remember the very first time I ever was on a bodyboard was a Mary's of Sligo bodyboard.
Mary's of Sligo?
Yeah, Mary's of Sligo was up on
how many stories start there?
Yeah, a little soft polystyrene board, and I actually went out with myself and my mum and my sisters out to Coney Island, and you were just basically in a swimming togs jumping through the waves. But my nickname arose. I eventually got on the Irish team. I would have done some events with the County Sligo Surf Club. So every August, the August Bank Holiday weekend was a really big time in Strand Hill. Then you had the Warriors Festival as well, which kind of finished off the season. But the County Sligo Open was one of the biggest surf events of the year, and was always on the August weekend in Strand Hill. And I would have entered that a few times, and then maybe got a couple of lucky results, and eventually got on the Irish surfing squad. And I remember going to Tramore to my first event down the Euro Irish Surf Challenge, where you got to meet some top African surfers. And the first real exciting event I went abroad was the Eurosurf in 1999.
Okay.
And that was over in Jersey, in the Channel Islands.
Okay, so you representing internationally at a young age.
Yeah, that was a junior competition, and we went over those longboarders, which is the 9-foot boards, shortboarders, which is the 6-foot boards, and the bodyboards, which are the little 42-inch boards. And myself and my friend from Strandhill went over. Strandhill was always very well represented in the bodyboarding. And
which one of those events now did you land the nickname?
This is my first one away. This is the Eurosurf in 1998, maybe, not 99, because we're every 2 years.
Yeah.
And my mum and dad had given me like £200 or something to go away with the team. Like, you know, the Irish Surf Association did their best to put on events and find sponsors to cover the cost, but you got a bit of spending money, and this is pounds.
Right, okay, proper money,
back with pounds. And so went over, I was there a day or two, we were there for a 10-day stay. And I remember going over to a surf shop on the other side of the island. Now, I had a bodyboard with me, but I clapped eyes in this bodyboard, which is £195 over there. And once you convert it to sterling,
for the whole trip, is it?
For the whole trip.
And then you've seen one, okay.
Yeah, so, and this Manta bodyboard, I can remember today with the crescent bat tail and da-da-da. I was like, okay, this is the one I have to go. And they're like, you sure? And I was like, oh, I have to
I'm going to starve for the weekend, but I'll have
Well, I didn't have a clue. I was only 15 or something. I didn't have much acumen, and so probably still don't have too much. But I kind of just, they're like, are you sure? It's pretty. I was like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. And then people were ribbing me like, how are you going to survive for the week? And this, that, and other. We got back to the campsite. We're kind of staying in this like semi-permanent tents. And where I got wrong, my manager came up to me, Stevie Burns, another Strandhill legend, and he said like, so Seamus, where's your surfboard? You know, where's your bodyboard? And I was like, oh yeah, where actually is it? And I'd left it on the bus coming back from the surf shop.
Lovely.
So we had all these like the Irish surfing team was always a 32 county affair. So we always had these guys from Antrim and the North Coast and Portrush, and they had this curious surfing lingo. It wasn't all like dude and man. It was, what about you? And you know, you've got nae gumption, you're only a shambles, you're only a, you know. So it's this kind of things, you know. You're nae gumption. Shambles nae gumption was actually my official term.
And also, it's not just shambles for
shambles nae gumption. Yeah,
I'd have to Google that exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if that
exact translation.
Yeah,
and like apart from, we'll go back to the surfing in a minute, but you went to Trinity.
Yeah.
And now, if I had to write this, I have to read this to make sure.
Oh, brilliant!
You studied physics and chemistry of advanced materials.
Yes.
Now, I've never heard that course in my life. So, like, what kind of world is that, or what exactly would you?
Well, like, you know, I was always interested in my surfing, but was also really interested in the books and study, and did a lot of science and math subjects in school. I did 2 years of general science in college. I wanted to study maybe astronomy in Galway, but I ended up going up to Dublin. I had some great friends up there, and the first 2 years was kind of general science, and then it was getting down to that, you had to kind of choose.
Yeah.
On one side was theoretical physics, which was kind of interesting, but the theoretical physics crowd were a bit like, you know, they were away with it. And then the other side was just all chemistry.
Right.
And I wanted to get the balance between chemistry and physics. I didn't like the organic chemistry and the biology, so I just wanted to do the inorganic and the kind of part of the physics course. So the last 2 years I did this course called the physics and chemistry advanced materials.
So did you know, there's a career in this I want to do, or you're just like, that sounds better than the
I
other
didn't
thing.
think career. See, once I went to college,
get the qualification.
Well, look, I was reading all these bodyboard magazines and surf magazines
instead of your books.
So, before I went to college, and I was just mad to go traveling, and I really wanted to go to Indonesia. So, like, I knew I was going to get my degree and then go traveling afterwards. I didn't really think too much about it. So for the last 2 years, I just did this. It was like microelectronics engineering. We did like nanoparticles and nanotechnology. Was the first. I'll probably do it now and more courses, but we were the first course to do this like 18 lecture course on nanotechnology.
Back then.
So
and
superconductors
thing now,
and
nanotechnology,
stuff.
like, so you were ahead of the game as such.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I just got my degree and then I went out and I studied something completely different.
That's what I was going to say. You went in and did again. I have to read these out. Like sound engineering, performing arts, and folklore trad. In Leitrim.
So, in Leitrim.
And now, could you mind me? Where were you going? Right, my chemistry of advanced materials. Next, I'll be a sound engineer. Or
chalk and cheese.
Where was the draw for you, and where was the draw to you?
I had to move back closer to the west. I mean, living in a city was kind of great, and being in college was such a great experience and a great education. And like we do have a great education system here in Ireland. That's one thing you can really say about the country. But I just couldn't really handle cities and city life,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get, you know, back and get a car. And see, around that time as well, Brendan, you have to understand that when I was studying in college, you know, if I wasn't a surfer, I'd probably just be a scientist now, and I'd be very happy doing that.
Yeah.
But when I was in college for those years, 2002, 2006, was also a kind of a period where I was stopping doing the competitions, and we were just focusing on the best waves when they would come.
Or so you were really nitpicking, going, I don't have time to be out there all the time, so you watch
Yeah.
and learn.
Well, when you're at home and you live at the beach, you just kind of go surfing. The waves are always there. But when we moved to the East Coast, to Dublin, I had friends from Dublin who'd borrow their mum's car. They were getting their licenses. And we went from kind of surfing every day to having to look at the weather. And then when the good swells came, it was kind of goodbye to lectures for a day or two or whatever. You could, you know, if you didn't have...
people that, I'll go back to the little about people that are addicted to it, but like some people just scoot out of work. Or a lot of surfers I know are purposely self-employed.
Yeah.
So they go, I know, I don't want to miss this. Like,
Yeah, well, that's pretty much how I've worked it as well. Yeah. So right now I've got the ideal work-life balance. You think that's the phrase for it now these days, where I can work in the summers when you generally have the smaller waves, and you know it's nice to be at the beach, but they're not very challenging.
Okay, I see. I get now. So the winter, then you go, I'm not really working as much, and now I can actually do what I want to do.
Exactly.
Very good. And like, so you did your performing arts and engineer, and obviously you didn't go working in that either. So in any way, did you, or did you start doing it?
The banjo wasn't gonna. What that was. I did a sound engineering course because when I was living in Dublin, I lived with some musicians and picked up an instrument, and when I got back home, I decided to. I had a friend who recommended I do it, and it was nice to take a year out as well because you know at that stage you're from age of 5 up to age of 21. You're constantly in school systems and exams and it's kind of. But it was weird. I did the sound engineering course and I lived with a woman who did this traditional Irish music course. So I was like, well, I can't really even play guitar, so I might as well learn it. So then I was I did the tin whistle for a year and learned all about the Sligo 3 and the big Michael Coleman and all about history and folklore and heritage, which really gave another dimension to things I was interested in, because I was interested just in science and
well, it gives your brain a release from that, I imagine, too. Just this creative fun side. I mean, it's not like playing live music, as I always say. It's a good buzz.
No, and that's how the last few years then getting into the live music scene in Sligo and moving back west was such a revelation. But it was a bit of a chalk and cheese moment going from studying advanced physics and materials in Dublin to beginner tin whistle in Drumshanbo.
And then obviously you'd done all the representing Ireland and all that, but like to go into it as a job, did you work for someone else in Sligo first, kind of? Was that how you dipped into working as an instructor, or did you do it elsewhere in Ireland, or did you just go set up my business? Like, how did that Sligo Surf Experience?
I would have started as a surf instructor first. As you know, once the trad music course finished up and I realised I wasn't going to be the world's greatest banjo player.
Okay, Seamus your dad wasn't worrying about you.
Yeah, no, Seamus wasn't worrying about but like saying that, even just picking up the few tunes and the instrument, like I've been in sessions in the venue or in just around where even someone as great as Seamus O'Dowd, who I've watched my whole life and would have been a big influence for me getting involved in music, and his two sons are amazing Sligo musicians as well. Even they've come down to my level, and I've got to play a few tunes with them at certain sessions, and Ray Cohen and all these other great.
There's a lovely community of musicians that are really polite and nice when they understand. Look, give someone along. So I mean, the lads are so polite, and so nice and helpful. Always, like even to deal with gigging and all that. So
it's such a great.
Well, believe they'd give you a help along if you weren't maybe at their level.
And it's also so great to learn that the Irish music scene is or was, because there's a lot.
Well, let's pretend it's only paused and it's starting to wake up again. I suppose, and hopefully that will come back. So you just go back to the Sligo Surf Experience. I know it's not that old itself, but so you instructed in Strandhill and then eventually decided I'm going to set up myself. Yeah,
so I moved back from Leitrim to Strandhill, and that's where I would have got more into surfing, because before that I was really focused on bodyboarding and. Like I was saying back in Dublin, we didn't just go on a Saturday surfing or a weekend or when you're finished work. It was kind of like you'd wait for those specific swells, and you spend quite many years building up a knowledge of the coast and knowledge of the conditions, and of course wanting to go overseas and surf all these great waves abroad. But surf instructing, working in a surf school was one of those jobs that kind of suits the surfing lifestyle.
Yeah, so it's perfect, best of both worlds. And I suppose you get a buzz of teaching people and seeing them go, hey, you could have some of the experiences I've got. I'll go back to your, you represented Ireland internationally at different levels, and like in surfing and bodyboarding, am I right in saying?
Just in bodyboarding.
Yeah. And was that ever like a career of any kind? Is there any kind of, I presume it's very hard to become a professional surfer, especially back maybe a number of years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot involved. You'd have to do a lot of travel. Bodyboarding wouldn't have had the same kind of level of industry.
As surfing.
And then there's one or two people when I was in college and just leaving college. One guy, Fergal Smith. There's a few guys maybe getting some money from surfing sponsorship. Like I've been sponsored since I was younger. Initially by NMD bodyboards and some wetsuits, and I remember Tom Hickey actually gave me my first wetsuit.
Oh, right, okay.
Circle One, I rememr it well. So companies are kind of supporting you with product and with materials and equipment to represent their brands, but to go and get the level to where you're winning competitions and earning enough money or getting paid by companies to travel, it's only a dedicated few. So some of these people was like Fergal Smith and his friend from home, Tom Lowe. They were charging massive waves, and he teamed up with the photographer named Mickey Smith, and they together, there's a movie out there called Powers of Three. I'd recommend
Powers of Three, okay, let's get people to check that out.
So they became a kind of little trio that really promoted themselves and got the right companies on board. And now there's a young guy called Garage McDade.
Yeah, I'm not into the big in surf world as such, but I mean, I've heard that name. I think a lot of us have heard that
you've
name.
been out with us before.
Well, I did.
Can't surf,
Yeah, well.
So Garage has really put the hard yards in. He's competed on the World Qualifying Series and a lot of the competitions in the UK and Europe, and he's charged some really big waves around here, so he's got noticed. Yeah. So he's been picked up by Rip Curl, and that's an interesting story as well. Because he was sponsored by Quicksilver.
Okay, again, we think we all, even if you're non-surfer, you do know those two brands and associate them. Yeah, okay, so how did that battle
Well, there's a famous surfer called Mick Fanning who's like, 3-time world champion, and as Mick Fanning would suggest, he's got Irish roots. So for one of his video projects, he came to Ireland to kind of chase his roots and chase a swell, and Garage is one of the best up-and-coming young Irish people, kind of tagged along the trip.
Yeah.
And Mick was like, oh gee, he's a good surfer, and when Mick went off, he must have had a word with the guys in Rip Curl and said, like, look
after him,
maybe nab him off the competitor. So he's been with Rip Curl the last few years now, and he's like, his full-time occupation is surfing.
So when you say, I mean, I know that I read that you and a bunch of friends started really exploring the surf around the West Coast more so. Was that like just for a bit of a hobby, or were you going, let's really see where there's extra cool swells as such around? Were you trying to promote it as a destination, or was it just...
No, we weren't trying to promote any destinations, no. See, if I told you, I'd have to kill you, Brendan.
And now, but the media did pick up on this.
No, not what we were doing. We weren't on social media. We weren't saying boo to a fly because we didn't want anyone to know about what we're doing. To be honest, it was a kind of it's a secret society kind of closed shop. It's a bit different now. Running a surf school and promoting Sligo. That was even before the Adventure Sligo thing took off in 2014.
Yeah, of course.
This is back in 2008 and 9, so that's a whole other different thing.
A different animal. But the likes of Garage McDade, sorry.
Yeah, Garage.
Those guys, to get high profile, that's what they need to do. Is that kind of the way? They'd have to go really extreme waves, get it filmed, and hopefully they get noticed. Is that a path to getting that fame?
I mean, a lot of people can just do the competitions, but we're not in the main frames of those areas like in Hawaii or in US or in South Africa, France, and it's a highly competitive zone, or in Australia. So Garage he was probably one of the best competitive surfers to come out, and like there's a certain worldwide level in any sport that you have to get to compete with the best. Yeah. And Garage was doing that.
Okay.
And everyone would have seen him from a young age doing that, and he's been highly successful. But it's a very cutthroat business. There's not a lot of money in it compared to other sports like Formula One, or snooker, or whatever. Yeah. So, but he was surfing the smaller waves, which a lot of the competitions are in, and no matter how good he was, no matter how skilled he was, to transfer to those monster waves, which we were kind of chasing. It took a lot, and he was only young, there was a lot in young shoulders. Yeah. But he's well established now. But a couple of years ago, he went out. He just dipped his toe in one winter and was like, "Oh, brilliant! Now G-Man's out surfing some of them." And then I think he got a taste for it. Because his skills transferred very well over to it. Okay. So even though he was scared, once he went, all those training, all that skills took in, and he would make that wave. And
you're speaking of scared, like we've seen, I suppose Mullaghmore, again, from an outsider looking in, would that be kind of one of the best places this side of the coast for like mega waves? Is that where the biggest kind of swells?
Yeah, well, it's one of the most well known because it's hidden in plain sight. It's right around the head there in Mullaghmore.
But it looks frightening, some of the waves. What was your scariest moment? I presume, was it the leg break, the famous leg break?
Or that wasn't at Mullaghmore. That was down south in
Riley's.
In Riley's. Okay. But I've had a few scary experiences at Mullaghmore. I think every experience has been scary out there. But I remember being over in Hawaii, and showing images of Mullaghmore, and they're just, that's amazing, but would never do it.
Oh, even they were going, you're mad.
Yeah, just because of the way it looks, and it doesn't have the palm trees and the sunshine. It's got
True enough.
it's usually like Highland westerlies, and like everyone on the jet ski, is wearing like heavy jackets or thermal gloves and stuff like that.
Doesn't look as sexy.
It really.
But was it? So it wasn't the size. It was just that that doesn't look.
No, it's the size as well, because it's an extremely large wave. Just the way it breaks, and it's a pretty hollow wave as well. So it's not just a wave that's tall; it's got weight to it.
Oh, okay.
And it's got serious consequences too.
It must be. I mean, I can imagine when people get addicted. It must be an unbelievable buzz. Out on that, like you're in the raw energy. I mean, even the time I went with you for the surf, like I only went out a bit, like, and I got up a little bit, but I just loved that. I don't know, there was real isolation in the water. It was everything was. I thought it was really cool. But I imagine way up high on this thing must be like an adrenaline rush you can't describe.
Not for everyone. It's just kind of about personal development as well. It's not about being a good surfer, it's about being a good person. And I think like a lot of people have been into surfing a long time. You got that initial buzz when you came out on your surf lesson with me.
Yeah.
And you get that from your first time, and you keep going back to the ocean for that. Like surfing is a connection with nature, and that's something every human needs, or every human has. And it's a great way to develop it as an ocean person, as a water person. But as you progress through the years, you're always looking, to like, okay, we've done that. Now what's next?
High,
and I was watching those videos from when I was younger, seeing Australian bodyboarders and American bodyboarders, charging bigger waves. I was like, well, that's going to be me one day. But there's no ways like that here in Strandhill Beach. But then suddenly you find Mullaghmore.
It's up the road, yeah.
So it was something that lured me out, and definitely there's fear there and trepidation, and you don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to put yourself in danger, or anyone who's going to rescue.
Is there a lot of safety protocol before you go into Mullaghmore, I presume?
There is, yeah. There's a guy called Peter Conroy. He set up the Irish Tow Surf Rescue Club, specifically around, we had a tow surf competition at Mullaghmore years ago, and we've had a few incidents at Riley's where I hurt myself and a number of other people that hurt myself. We've had a very, very close call last season at Mullaghmore last March, where someone was held under for 3 waves and got knocked out and hit their head off the reef and had to be rescued. So the Tow Surf Rescue has a system where there's a dedicated safety ski, and Peter offers training for the jet ski drivers, what to do in emergency, and everyone who's surfed bigger waves, or we all kind of look after each other. So there's definitely an element of safety, but you're kind of on your own too.
I imagine it's like they can get you when you come back up again, rather than we'll be down there in a minute. Yeah, okay.
Well, there are these vests now that have been helped. Like when I started surfing Mullaghmore, I didn't have any of these, but a friend of mine, Dylan Scott, put my name down for Patagonia, and these guys started wearing them. So a few years ago, a guy called Sion Milosky in Hawaii died surfing a wave called Avalanches. And he was a lifeguard, big wave surfer, but accidents happen. So they come up with this idea of an inflatable vest.
Ah, okay.
So that you wear that under your wetsuit or on top, and when you're under the water, you can pull a tab, and it works off these CO2 cartridges that you use for a bicycle repair pump.
Yeah.
To pump up your tire, and that inflates bladders, and then that brings you to the surface quicker.
Wow.
So we've been using them quite a lot.
Especially on the dangerous areas, obviously. Not your average surf.
No. They're not for sale in the shops either, because it's a funny one. You want them just on sale, so anyone can just go out.
That's it. I mean, I imagine most people that haven't a clue what they're at wouldn't chance it, obviously.
We'd be surprised.
I know, like anything. Does everyone call you Shambles? Or that's you don't.
Shambles is my name. My friends call me Shambles, and definitely within all the surf industry. But then when it came to my own surf school, we were going through names and stuff, and I was like, Shambles Surf School. I was like, it's not really inspiring parents to give me their kids for 2 hours.
I can totally understand that,
So
Sligo Surf Experience did the job.
It did, yeah. Well, I want to Sligo in the title anyways,
so. Well, we were talking about addiction to surfing and the whole thing. Like, for you, which do you prefer? Do you prefer surfing or do you prefer bodyboarding?
Well, I'm a bodyboarder, and I guess I surf as well. So, I mean, it's antithetical for me to try and choose between them, because I don't need to do them at the same time.
Yesterday, if you said you can only choose one, would you have a preference?
Bodyboarding.
And you do bodyboard in Mullaghmore, or no? That's only
I bodyboard, and I've never surfed Mullaghmore.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I was thinking so you have to surf because they're so crazy, but no. And I've seen some of the skills, like the flips and that on the bodyboard. It's amazing. Like, it really.
So it's like the difference in snowboarding and skiing, and I started off bodyboarding for years, and I was just like completely. That's what I want to do. And there's there's twice as many bodyboarders in the world than surfers. We outnumber surfers 2-1 in participation. Wow. You've ever seen people on the little boogie boards on the beach flapping in. But the surf industry in the late 90s and early 2000s, it kind of went mega global. And bodyboarding was the fastest growing water sport in the 1990s. And but then towards after millennium, it didn't really, the surfing industry and the bodyboarding industry separated. So it's a bit more underground, the bodyboarding community, and I just love it for that reason.
Okay, yeah.
And in Ireland, there's a very solid crew of us. A lot of us are not even Irish, but they are Irish. They're like Portuguese and French and Cornish. They're just, that's the Irish bodyboard crew.
They've dug their roots into that.
And but then again, across the whole world, I have a network of friends across the whole planet.
I presume you can go anywhere in the world and have somewhere to camp.
Yeah,
really. There's that community, I'd say.
And the same with surfing as well, but just it's a microcosm within a microcosm with bodyboarding. But the relationship between bodyboarders and surfers is very good in this country, and I'm just really like promoting bodyboarding because there's a load of people out there promoting surfing. But for example, yesterday I went off my van looking for a wave. I had my surfboard and my bodyboard in the back. Checked a few spots. The best spot I saw, I said I'd take my surfboard out. Tomorrow I might take my bodyboard out. So I've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah. So you're able to do both really well, I imagine, at this stage.
Oh, well, I better practice what I preach.
Like the day I went surfing, it's one thing I say about surfing, like in Sligo, which, we do get a bit of rain here.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a brilliant activity to do on a wet day because you're wet anyway. So the day I went with you, it was lashing rain. Sure, it didn't matter at all. So I think anyone goes, oh, what are we doing on a wet day? It's like, go surfing. Like, it's so good. But when I was looking there going, do you ever actually get sick of being wet all day long?
Well, it depends. If I haven't been surfing in a while, I just want to just jump in the sea and get just get wet. We surfers often say that the waves aren't that good. They're like, oh, we just glad to get wet.
Yeah.
But yeah, during the summer when at the start of the year it's grand, you're kind of getting in. But once the busy season hits, you're in your wetsuit all the time.
All day.
Well, I do a lot more management of the business now these days, so. I actually kind of prefer being in the water sometimes with the kids and with the adults having the crack, and that's the fun part of the job. But definitely, it is a great job because every time I come down with the group and I get onto the beach, it's just like wow.
Another buzz, and I got that off you that day. Where not only great instruction, clear instruction, safety was. If anyone parents looking in and their kids are going with you, oh my God, you'll be as safe as houses. Like I thought it was really good. But it was great fun, and you were. And I mean, it's not easy to keep doing the same thing class after class. And you had a lovely joy and energy with everyone that was getting going. So that must be a nice thing to work.
Well, every job gets repetitive after a while. I'm sure even. The host of Sligo.
Well, we haven't been doing it that long yet. Come back in a year or two, we'll see how we're getting on.
You're natural.
And I assume your car, the house, like if I bring the kids to the beach, the whole beach comes back. Your house must be just a beach at this point.
It is, yeah. Well, you do get very familiar with your wetsuit, and you get very used to be putting it on. But it's great just being able to be outdoors, and I always say to people, it's great to be able to live and work in your own village. Because a lot of my generation who went to Summerhill College, like a lot of them are, went off into their colleges and got their degrees probably and all that, but most of them wouldn't be living in Sligo, either in Dublin or Galway or Sydney or Toronto or wherever.
So it is, you said, and something you love doing as well, like, and right on your doorstep. And outside of Sligo in Ireland, or maybe it is in Ireland, where is your favourite place to surf? Like where's the best place in the world you've been?
Yeah, well, there's always a better place maybe, and on its day there's some spots ever good. There's probably one spot here in Strandhill that's one of my favourite places to surf.
Oh, right, okay.
But it breaks so often you might as well forget about it.
Okay.
And then I have a few places up, like one of my what I would call my home spot, which is not even in my home county, it's up in Donegal, is a place called Black Spot.
Okay,
and
I've heard this name along the way.
Yeah.
Like Daniel McGarrigle, you probably know Daniel.
Of course, Daniel Brown, all these guys. But so that's very close to my heart as well. And I got a bunch of favourite waves, but I suppose I'm going to have only one favourite. Just so many. I mean, the wave Riley's where
you broke your leg.
Where I broke my leg is probably one of my favourite places as well. But that's they never put me off. But so. I have one favourite.
Was there somewhere out of foreign that you were like, not even just only the wave, but the location, everything was just glorious?
Oh yeah, really I went to Hawaii and I surfed this wave called Pipeline, which is one of the more famous waves in the world. It's up there on the north shore of Oahu in the Hawaiian Islands. It was an amazing experience to go there. I would love to go back and surf it again, but I couldn't say it's my favourite wave, even though it was palm trees and sand, because it's just so crowded.
Very Instagram friendly, so I imagine.
Very Instagram friendly. And I've surfed some really great waves around the world, but I've never got better waves in Ireland. So I had to say some of the waves, my favourite wave will probably be a wave in Ireland. But that's not to say now we're kind of getting through the COVID era. Hopefully international travel will open back up again, and I'm really looking forward to getting abroad. And
And I mean, if someone wants to go and watch some of these extreme waves, I presume locally Mullaghmore is, we've talked about it. It's not to the pier though, or the village. Where would you go? Like, I don't even know where you go to watch this.
Yeah.
Or is it really far out? Can you see it from the
No,
coast?
it is. It breaks a good bit offshore. It takes about 45 minutes to paddle out there when it's on a big day.
Oh, wow, okay.
Unless you get a jet ski. The jet skis will leave from the pier and go around the head. So it's just if you go through Mullaghmore village, after about another 2 minutes, you get onto the head before you go right around towards Castlebar Castle, and you'll see Mullaghmore breaking out there in the distance. But
you probably need binoculars though, would you, to be able to see it?
Yeah, you could bring binoculars. You can see it just
in front. I suppose just the power of these massive.
Yeah,
waves.
have you seen it yourself?
No, I've never been live watching it out there, but I've seen videos, and like just the raw power of the ocean anywhere is class. But to see these waves, definitely want to go and see that. I'm asking that question for myself really as much as anyone watching.
You have to get out there. Well, I get that question a lot, and when you're a surfer, you understand the ocean has certain rhythms, and someone drives out to Mullaghmore 99 days out of 100, it's just going to be flat.
Right.
And you won't see any wave there.
So it's nothing to do with big winds or storms, is it? Is it swells that come from across the Atlantic or something? That
exactly.
See, I know loads about surfing.
Yeah.
So that's what you're watching for.
You're watching for the weather forecast. So if you get a big swell in Mullaghmore, that means 4, 5, or 6 days before that, a big low pressure system has been at the North Atlantic, just south of Iceland, coming off Greenland, and those anticyclonic winds have. It's called a fetch. So the fetch is the distance across the ocean the wind is blowing.
Okay.
And if the fetch is very long and it blows for a long time, a couple of hours, a couple of days in the same direction, it generates a huge swell. These swells take a couple 24 hours or 48 hours to cross the ocean and slam into the coast of Sligo.
So there's some website that would be really intricate knowing exactly.
Yeah, there's Magic Seaweed and Wind Guru, and we're kind of monitoring these things. So I might see in 4 or 5 days, oh God, there's a big swell from Mullaghmore coming now. In another 2 days, that forecast could just disappear, and you might be like, oh, we have to wait for the next one, or it could intensify.
Yeah.
So, especially North Atlantic, it's very hard to predict.
Yes.
But
just the weather itself is always a nightmare to predict.
The only thing you can say with the weather is changeable. So, but again, you have some of the biggest recorded waves in this part of the world are in the North Atlantic. There was 20-meter waves recorded off the M4 buoy off Donegal. Right. So I was actually I did an interesting podcast with one of my friends, Noel Fitzpatrick, works for Med Éireann, and he got me on a podcast there with one of Sarah. She was a doctor of basically she did a PhD in waves.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nearly as unusual as your degree.
Oh, nearly. But they were talking about some of the record swells that have happened.
20 metres.
And 20 meters, and that's on a big offshore. So if you could harness that for wave energy, it'd be amazing.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, hopefully Ireland wakes up to doing that a bit more in time.
Yeah.
But not for today, I know it says you. So surf jargon, there's tons of it, and we know some of the obvious ones like gnarly and whatnot. But from researching yourself, I was like, what are these things? Okay, so I'm going to hit you with these. You tell me there. What is a psycho pit?
So basically waves can be like spilling waves, which you might see in a small day, a 2-foot day out in Strand Hill, or when Mullaghmore is breaking a 20-foot low tide, it's not coming in and crumbling, it's pitching, and there's a huge, what we call a barrel.
Yes.
Or a tube. So you've heard of that. But when you get to Mullaghmore style, a really, really crazy one, we call that a psycho pit.
Psycho pit. Okay.
So a pit is the cave or the tube, the chamber inside.
Paddling bomb?
Yeah, so again, when you're surfing waves like that at Mullaghmore, over the last 10 or 20 years, they started pioneering towing in, which is surfers use a jet ski to hold onto a rope and get towed into a wave or whipped in. So we call that a tow in. Yeah. And then that was kind of norm. And then the paddling came back in fashion. So on a bodyboard or surfboard, so waves that guys would be even using jet skis on, if someone goes out and uses only their arms to get into the wave, that's a bomb is like a really big wave. Yeah. So you'll have waves all day, and then a bigger one will come in, and that's the bomb, and you're always looking for a bomb.
Yeah. Okay.
The bigger of the average ones, and that's paddling bomb.
Full froth mode. Not to do with coffee.
Not to do with coffee. When you're frothing is when you're driving around and you come up to a surf spot and the waves are really, really good.
Okay. So it's not actually in the water, it's actually
no.
Okay.
So you're frothing. You're frothing at the mouth to get out there.
Right. Okay.
And then when you're in full froth mode, it's just you just can't wait to get out there.
A crazy closeout.
Yeah. So a wave which peels and breaks, that's a peeling wave. That's what you're looking for. But nearly every wave at the end, it finishes and it closes out.
Yeah.
You might take off in a wave that looks like a peeling wave, and then it breaks too fast, it will close out.
And just smash into the water.
And a crazy one is just, sometimes you just might go and you know it's going to close out anyways. So.
Yeah. So, away from surfing, other hobbies, is it just music, or is there other things you take part in? There's loads of stuff to do in Sligo, obviously. What do you do to get away from surfing?
I've actually got quite a few other little hobbies. When I was out in Leitrim, I took up, I could play a little bit of guitar and Irish music, and then I took up the banjo. So I like learning tunes and going to traditional music sessions. But also in that course, I learned a lot about folklore and heritage. And I started learning a lot more about Sligo about Irish myths. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine suggested I research the local history and ended up giving a talk on Strandhill history. So actually this winter I'm working on a writing project called, it's going to be called Waking Maeve. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, each winter I've been delving into the history of Sligo. And so that's one of my other major interests.
So it's
history.
not just a hobby, that's probably a big, busy project. Like.
Yeah, well, it kind of spiraled out of a history talk I gave. And then I just kind of, I saw there isn't really a history of Strandhill. So it's a kind of a history of Strandhill and Killera based on the ancient history of Killera, which is, that the whole peninsula with Balshay Bay on one side, Sligo Bay in the north, and then the Atlantic Ocean. So 70% of the megaliths in Ireland are in kind of Sligo.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, that means it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of them are in Killera. We have 3 major hilltop cairns in Knocknarea and 2 in Kieran's Hill. We also have the Stole, which is the central monument in Carramore, which really marks out Strandhill as a really, really ancient site.
So this is, have you a timeline on this when people will be able to, when are you going
to
release
hopefully
it?
this winter I'm going to get it finished off, because I have most of the work done from, the Kieran's Hill, Carramore sites, and then you've got, actually when you find out that there's actually a Viking settlement in Knox Park in Balsadare, and then we have Classic Brone and the Viking invasions, and then we also fast forwarding through, you have the Spanish Armada, the story of the Quair, and that's a fascinating story. And there's all the myths about Sligo and the famine. You have the connection with Dracula and
it's steeped in it, isn't
it? Bram Stoker. So I'm going to try and build up this story, but what I'm really excited about, and this touches on something we talked about earlier, is once I kind of have most of the ancient history done. And again, that just kind of expanded because there was so much more stuff. Now, I'm not an academic in history. It's not going to be, an academical work on history, an academic work on history. But it's going to be kind of like the SALT method, just building it up. And once you put it all together, it's just a really interesting story about Strandhill for visitors who come here. But what I'm really looking forward to, I have that kind of done, and I'm looking forward to doing it from the 1960s on. So I've interviewed some
modern history.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and speaking of modern history, then, in my research, can you tell me about the bit of folklore? There's a group called the Top Road SBNPO Misbehaviours Club.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
how did you hear about that?
Oh, you see, it's on the internet.
Oh,
so
no.
I don't think there's videos or pictures there, but
no.
I presume this is a nod and a wink. You won't find out any more about that, Brendan.
Well, that's just my nickname is Shambles, and there's the surfers they're good characters and they're good crack.
Yeah.
And you actually asked me a really interesting question earlier about what was Strandhill like back in the day. Like, it's got very popular now with 5 or 6 surf schools in Strandhill. Surfing is like a really mainstream kind of activity, recreation activity. There's the Wild Atlantic Way, which is like the ultimate surf trip in Europe, along the edge of Europe. And but back when I was growing up in the mid to late 90s, there was just a really small group of people. If you were seen as a surfer, no one really knew what it was. There's no internet. There's no surfing was kind of an arcane, underground, myth, esoteric kind of a sport.
Yeah. And
the guys who are doing it were just kind of legends. There's guys like Colin O'Hare, Paul Rennick, Shane Meehan, McDermott brothers, these kind of people who I looked up to. And there's one really good friend of mine, Aidan Byrne, who's now over in Japan.
Oh, okay.
So he would have come up with this SBNPO, Strandhill Boys Never Pull Out thing. So I'm not really too sure what it ever meant, but I know I was heavily involved.
It was good fun and good crack. I'm going
to
guess.
It still exists. It still exists.
Yeah. So we might get a secret invitation.
Yeah, they say you only know you're a part of it when it's too late to leave.
Ooh, okay. Well, we'll have an episode on that sometime. I know from over the years, seeing your stuff on social media, like charity plays a big and like good campaigns on that. I mean, I know Surf to Heal is something you're involved in, and the Clean Coasts. What can you tell me more about them, I suppose?
Yeah, I'm not the world's most charitable person, and it was something that we got involved in, and it's good to give back, and there's a lot in Strandhill. We have a community that's done a lot of charity events, and probably one of the funniest ones was a man auction we did actually one time, which is kind of back to the SBMPO
Yeah, I was
days.
going to say, give me a link.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Alan Marie, did a SIRF, Strandhill Indonesian Relief Fund after the Aceh earthquake. And they looked around trying to go, what can we auction off? What's our main resource? And it was our man capital.
Fair enough.
So if you're an electrician or you're a carpenter or surf instructor, we raise money that way. And I know Alan Mulrooney is a really good friend of mine, neighbour. His dad, Kieran Mulrooney, Strandhill has done a lot of this kind of thing. So I guess it's kind of rubbed off. Surf to Heal was an interesting one, which was it's a charity set up to bring children with special needs surfing, especially children with autism. And going back to you asked me how I got into surf instructing. When I did my course, the first time I actually taught surfing was with the Surf to Heal. So that was really rewarding, seeing how children with autism were responding to these surfing events. And so that's still going. There's another great charity called Liquid Therapy up in Monroe which does the same thing. And I have been involved with Clean Coast for a few years, which was, I had friends who were doing organic farming and planting forest trees, and I met a lot of people out in Leitrim who were growing their own vegetables and living in environmentally friendly houses, and I wasn't quite there yet. I was like, how am I going to live up to all these people who are doing like so many amazing things? And then I met a woman who worked for Clean Coast and explained how the beach cleans work, and I was like, well, you pick up a bag of rubbish, you're not exactly saving the world, but you've done one positive iota.
I think that's a huge thing with the whole green thing. People go, how can I help? It's like, well, there you go, just do that. And I mean, and I know you do that sometimes with your classes in the summer, your summer camps.
Yeah, that's a part of our summer camps every summer.
What a brilliant way to teach the next generation practical, simple thing you can do anytime you go for a beach walk or whatever. So,
and it's a visual thing; people can see it, and it's like maybe it looks a bit goody two-shoes, going up picking up rubbish, but you get over that, and it's something which is infectious. We also did stuff with Breast Cancer Ireland, and I think the hospice now is one of my chosen charities choice in Sligo. So
yeah. So keep an eye on Sligo Surf Experience for any of those events. Connect if people want to get involved or have people with special needs and maybe want to do some surfing. You have plenty of facilities to cater for them.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I know you have a real love of Sligo. I'm talking to you tonight, but talking to you before, seeing you talk at things. I mean, what do you love most about Sligo? What are you most proud of about Sligo? What it does, or?
Yeah, well, we were part of that Sligo Adventure campaign. Like, there's a lot of businesses, not just surfing businesses, kayaking, climbing, stand-up paddleboarding, and they've really brought an outdoor adventure flavour to Sligo, which is right on point with the Wild Atlantic Way being on our doorstep, and we're been a key county in that. But I think researching the history of Sligo over the last few years, Yates is coming to mind there, Spike Milligan, you've got the Dragler connection, so and the music, we have a really unbelievable live music scene, and a lot of musicians are centred here, so that is another thing that I really think you can't take the music out of Sligo.
No, it's absolutely ingrained. What there's in normal times about 100 gigs a week. So it's and
one
of our guests, we John the map, just this amazing asset to the town.
But I guess sorry to answer. My favourite thing about Sligo was the surf.
Well, that would be, I suppose, the obvious answer.
It's a bit of a no-brainer.
And is there anything that you see, from Sligo's development, maybe that maybe would frustrate you, or what would you kind of like to see more happening that isn't happening, as such?
Yeah, well, Sligo's developed an awful lot in the last few years. I mean, from what I remember, some meetings went to the population of Strandhill doubled between 2004 and 2006. Wow. So development brings its own issues. When you zoom back out, I mean, it's kind of there are some issues there, but it's kind of a positive thing that Sligo has seen such development.
Yeah.
But a few things, again, go back to the Clean Coast thing. I work at the beach, so we just try and set a good example as surfers and as a local business owner, trying to leave no trace and trying to tidy up our office essentially.
Yeah.
But you do get an awful lot of visitors to the beach. You think there's people on duty who's going to clean up after them. There's one little thing that would get me. The people doing the dog poop bags.
And
that became so I don't know how that became a trend that you pick up your dog poop after you, although there is an issue there with dog waste. But when they leave, you know what I'm going to say next.
Leave the bag.
Yeah.
It's like I know I heard someone doing this before. Sure, just dissolves. It's like, yeah, but won't dissolve when I stand on it. 5 minutes later, like.
Yeah.
So
I did a surf festival with a lovely family that come over from Luton, and they've got family in Connery in Tubbercurry, and when I came back from the lesson, I was just chatting away to them, and I saw someone reach out into the rocks and pick up a dog poop bag and bring it with her. She had a dog, but it was someone else had left it there, and I said, "Oh, fair play."
Yeah. Well, there's always a few good people to look after the ones,
Yeah.
the bad eggs. Now, the magic question I ask most of my guests: if I give you €1 million and have to spend it within Sligo, what would you spend it on? Can't be partying or the SBNPO club or any of that.
Yeah, you might be a bit of that. One thing would be an artificial wave, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that? I wouldn't have known
Yeah,
that.
well, look, if I really had a million...
Is this somewhere in the world like they do these?
Yeah, there's
on
artificial
a coast?
waves now, which has radically changed the map when it comes to surfing, because you're at the whims of nature and all that. But I don't think one's been built in Ireland yet. They built one in Bristol.
What? Okay.
Yeah, so just before lockdown hit, myself and my friend Shimmy and got invited by some British bodyboarders. They were going to have kind of an event with like all some of the most well-known bodyboarders in the UK and Ireland on Patrick's Day, St. Paddy's Day,
Okay.
over in Bristol. And we had booked the tickets, and you know things were creeping up in numbers, and we didn't know what this new weird thing that was happening. Things were closing down, and we're like, should we go? Shouldn't we go? And then we eventually didn't. But that would be a bit of a fancy. I mean, like, you know, somewhere like Norwich Hospice would probably be the best place to give €1 million to.
I know.
But I mean, I don't think that's in your.
No, well, I mean, we'd all love to. But I understand. Just sometimes I think, you know, it's nice to go, well, what can we do that really improve, you know, the place? But that's mad. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Artificial wave. If you could build one up,
Nice.
yeah, a skate park and artificial wave.
Well, there you
That'd
go.
be amazing.
Brilliant.
Put Sligo on the map even more so.
Now, before we let you go, we always have to make sure people know all about. So, Sligo Surf Experience. It's out in Strandhill, obviously. People can know where to find you on social media. What apart from it's surf lessons for? Is surfing for anyone? Age group?
Surfing for all age groups. We just try and make surfing accessible. I mean, like going back, you asked me how I got into the surfing. It was a good fun job that was suited the surfing lifestyle. And I've worked in a number of different surf schools, and I just wanted to be able to do things my way. And I thought I could do as good a job, if not better, than anyone doing it, given my background and history with it. But I do remember when I finished my course in Leitrim, on my music teacher, Mossy Martin, a fantastic fiddler from Keju, he was saying, Seamus, what do you plan to do next? I was like, oh, well, look, there's this course that's coming for becoming a surf instructor, and, you know, go back to Strandhill, get work from there. He goes, brilliant, make your passions pay.
Good.
You know, and I always remember that.
Yeah. And again, as I said earlier on, when you go to visit you in a lesson, and I really have to come out again and do another one. I mean, I know that's cheap.
Oh yeah, well,
I did enjoy it, and then, you know, sometimes you just go, oh, I must do that, But no, I really, and I would recommend it to anyone watching.
Will he come out as well?
Finian behind the camera there, yeah, we'll get him out. He loved his bit of bodyboarding before and all that.
Deadly.
Well, Seamus Shambles, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I think we had one of the longest chats we've had on the show, but like, it was so interesting, so many things to find out about you, and like anyone I think that meets you should sit down and have a coffee or a beer with you, whatever. Like, you're a really nice guy. You've done so much for Sligo community, Strandhill community, and even the whole surfing world. So keep up the good work and keep up the energy, and hopefully we'll have a chat to you again some other time. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.